it's taken us 2 years to really even figure out, okay, from the why, the first year, the second year was the what, and then now we're figuring out how. And I like, it's really that simple. We're still figuring out how.
I
And
like
so our
that.
goals, if you're like, could peel back my brain, I'm looking at 3 goals on my whiteboard right now, which is develop company culture, eliminate some debt, which that's okay if you need to have some little debt going into it because we bootstrapped it, and at least I have 100% equity, and so I'd rather
Yeah.
take that on than give away equity any day of the week.
Welcome to the Moxie Podcast. We are in the end of September, about to enter quarter 4. So anyone that is in the business world, we know what that means. But I've been so excited because you guys have gotten to hear from a lot of great guests this month, just talking about why they started their podcast or why they wrote this book or why they started their business. So we are kind of taking it back. It's called BTS, the why behind it all. So we're talking about behind the scenes and kind of the journey to that. And I'm excited to have Skyler on the podcast.
That's right. I'm a repeat
Which is your
customer.
site. I know. I feel like this whole year I've had a lot of repeats, but this shows like
Great.
you guys are
I
just
haven't said
like
anything too
gems.
inappropriate yet. That's good.
Yeah. And we want, I feel like we could, if we listened back at your other podcast, wow, how life has changed in your world. But we are going to focus on today just Confidant Co specifically, because the last time you were on, this is something that we actually like didn't get much into. You were just kind of going through just transition in general from ministry to actually starting Confidant Co. We'll put Skyler's episode in the show notes because can't remember it right now, guys, on the top of my head. But it was a couple of seasons ago that you guys can listen to just like who he is and his heartbeat. But I want to talk about the why, the big why, and when you transitioned. Well, kind of tell our audience now your a little bit of your background so that they understand just even how we met, kind of missions, the church, and now where you're at. That will give good context.
Absolutely. So I think the first episode you featured me on was like at least 6 years ago, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Longevity, friendship, let's go. My life back then and the hat that I was wearing was a minister around missions and mobilization and partnerships. And so obviously huge alignment, and that's where Jenny and I met through the Amani Collective route. And then that's where kind of my heartbeat started behind what we do here today. Just being surrounded by grassroots organizations and seeing social impact as a whole, and the vehicle through organizations of that.
So we've never talked about though, like the aha moment. I love these moments, whether you're like sitting in a bar or having coffee or whatever, and you're like, this is going to be a brilliant idea, whether or not it fails later or it's successful. It's like that moment of just thinking through all of that. So was there one moment that happened with Confidant Co, or kind of was it a like several kind of a domino effect of moments?
Yeah, so it was a season. I decided to leave ministry for several reasons, but one of the things that I knew I wanted to do was help out the nonprofit social impact space because of honestly proximity to you, Jenny. So huge credit to being in proximity to Jenny. You get thrown into starting your own ventures, as you all know, if you've been around her too long. But I was kind of throwing around this model of helping out doing communications for grassroots organizations. And then I was at a buddy's house, and I was doing that for about a year. So I was doing it for free, and I would just volunteer for nonprofits here in town and help out with a website or help out with their gala and just do everything kind of pro bono, whether it's graphic design or whatever. And I was at a dinner here in Houston, and Andrew Packard, so shout out to Andrew Packard, who's this brilliant creative strategist working out of Atlanta now. But he was saying, it sounds like you just need to start your own agency. And I was like, wait, what's an agency? And so that's was my aha moment after I've been doing it for free for a year of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I could create some type of sustainable business model around what I love to do, even if I don't get paid for it. And so that's kind of where I knew this was going to be my sweet spot for me personally. And I knew that there was going to be other creatives that would be super interested and eager to be a part as well. So, and that was almost 2.5, 3 years ago. And I knew
Yeah.
exactly where I was in that moment. And so I think the conversation went on in the like later on in the night, but I was fixated, obsessive over this idea, and I feel bad because I didn't let him talk to anyone else because I had so many questions on like what next steps could look like for the rest of the night. But yeah, that was like definitely the aha moment. Just haven't looked back ever since.
What do you think has been, I don't want to say greatest accomplishment, but something that you just have been really proud of where you're like, where it felt really aligned with your values when you've started, I guess over, the last 2 or 3 years. Fun fact, Skyler was part of the School of Ethical Impact. So for all of you who don't know about that, don't go to the website because it is down and in construction for like a year. School of Ethical Impact has been in a lot of transition, but it's been foundational to every coaching business or anything we've started with understanding what sustainability is and long-term success in the social impact world. And so I feel like I was honored and got, a little bit of privilege of being kind of a fly on the wall of just seeing it come to fruition and develop from like processing it out loud. And so, I would love to know maybe some milestones, but just something you've been really proud of in the value alignment side.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for me, the School of Ethical Impact was really formative because that's when we were still in that like year of ideation, and that's where you fit best, like really shaping out how can we flesh this out. And so, like it was the most pivotal time for us to be apart, and that's really what kind of got us onto our why. I really formulated our why in that year, and I don't think and I'm not just saying that just to be nice because we're talking together and plugging School of Ethical Impact.
He's getting tons of brownie points, guys.
Yeah. Um, but I really did formulate our why during our 6 months, and I think we had the best cohort of all. But I really did like a lot of that vision board during that year. So I'd say like the win for us and some of the biggest milestones has been, man, I think growing with organizations. Like and this is like a lot to your credit too, when we're aligned, is like, I like to grow with organizations season by season. And I would love for them to have the problem that they don't need us anymore because their budget is to a point where they can outsource internally. And then we're just kind of helping out on like a consulting internal role and providing extra big project deliverables for them. And we're pretty much going to do that with several clients in the next upcoming year, I feel like, because we've built their brand and we've got their cause awareness to a place where there's so much attention that their monthly recurring program is going up, or they have incredible deliverable and communications pieces to other major supporters, or they've grown up to a point where they can start to build their sustainable team. And that's just been really exciting. And so typically we've rebranded them to help out in that process. And so that's not like a tangible something that we could hold on to. That's like, yes, we walked that whole organization through a rebrand and they look different. Like it's like kind of like you're dating somebody and you're like, that person looks different because of me. Like I'm proud that they're living their best life. And that's because they've been in proximity to us. And so that's, I feel like, is something that we're most excited about. And we've been able to do that with several organizations in the last 2 years.
Yeah. In the moments, I mean, we've shared a lot of different journeys this month. And I feel like this kind of brings it back to when Moxie first started, we shared a lot of entrepreneurial stories and why we had you on before as well. But you are in what, three and a half years?
Officially 2 years, but 3 years since the ideation phase, which isn't.
Yeah. So I find this phase is a little hard. Like it's still bootstrapping and it's still like, there's a lot to it. So I'm curious how you're feeling right now. What's waking you up in the morning, to push forward. And for those who are in the ideation stage, I think like what got you from the ideation stage? So this is like 2 questions. So what's waking you up in the morning now, pushing you forward? Because I know you got some good goals. And again, that's going to align back to your why. But then also from the ideation stage to actually doing it, what got you to that point? Because I find that there's some ideas that don't need to be taken off the shelf. I'm an ideator. I
Yeah.
should shelf more of my ideas because I tend to activate way too much. But then there's some that like we just get stuck and obviously fearful. So curious what kind of steps you took to move in that direction.
Yeah, I think just trial and error. Like I probably exercise half of the ideas that you do, but at least I get to learn through them and see what works.
Yeah.
We started off a by being like an ad hoc development officer service too. And within the first year, I realized like probably wasn't ethical on my standpoint, and it wasn't going to be sustainable for us as an organization. So we totally recalibrated the service package and the product that we have. And now we're just doing strictly communication. So anytime we talk with donors, it's not from a confidant standpoint, and I'm not leveraging our own network, but we're doing it from an admin email on the behalf of the organization. So we really are still trying to embody the brand and the voice around everything they do, but it's from an internal organizational standpoint. And so
That's definitely a shift. That must have been
you
really
shift,
hard because
yeah,
because I think this was one of the challenges I feel like you had at the beginning because you're like really well connected, but you can't necessarily like you it's
yeah,
hard. It's hard.
especially if you're wearing multiple hats. And honestly, this is to protect my role with Amani too.
hmm
And at that point, I just stepped into the chairman role. And so if I was going to
hmm
approach major donors or foundations, I wanted it to do it from strictly an Amani standpoint. And so I
hmm
think that's only ethical and fair when we're creating something sustainable there. So that was a huge pivot, and I did that, and I recognized that was probably going to be the case or need to be the case within the first year. And so the second year, we've realized that was what needed to happen, and then we created the product for it. And then by the third, we've just been executing it. So it's taken us 2 years to really even figure out, okay, from the why the first year, the second year was the what, and then now we're figuring out how. And I like it's really that simple. We're still figuring out how.
I
And so
like
our
that.
goals, if you're like could peel back my brain, I'm looking at 3 goals on my whiteboard right now, which is develop company culture, eliminate some debt, which that's okay if you need to have some little debt going into it because we bootstrapped it, and at least I have 100% equity, and so I'd rather
Yeah.
take that on than give away equity any day of the week, and then build secure systems that allow our services to scale. And so the how looks like I'm taking the long-term investment on not paying myself as much or not using my time implementing, but developing the team that can do that to
hmm
scale it. So we've made a move from hiring 30 1099s to moving 10 of them or 12 of them to W-2s, and then
hmm
really investing in our team, which goes back to the company culture side of it. And so we're
And what it
still
also goes back to is like the consistency for your customer, because I find that when you do that switch, you're obviously developing the person. Like when you bring someone into a W-2 standpoint, for anyone who is listening and owns businesses, as this terminology, but I mean, you're going to be very much invested in that person versus a contractor. And when you are, and they feel that support, that's going to overlay into your customers, and your customers are going to feel like you have more, I would assume, consistency for them and quality that you're outputting.
Yeah. I think the struggle that I have that I haven't, that we're trying to solve with our systems and people are like, people still want to talk to the CEO. And I know that you have a similar issue. So, I mean, I'd be curious to like hear if you have any solutions for us because I'm trying to get myself out of the room and I somehow get pulled back in. And that's not right for my team. We, and they know a lot more of the answers than I do because they're in the weeds in the day to day.
Right. I think that takes time. So I think a perfect example would be Diana. She's our director of communications and partnerships within Amani Collective on the nonprofit side, which and what Skyler has said, he has been sitting as our board chair, which has been awesome on our board of directors. So on that whole side, I am always fundraising and fund development stuff. And that's exactly right. Like those connections and those networks, like they want to talk to me as the founder. On the Amani Collective LLC side, people want to talk to me as like the person on the ground because they trust me that their custom work that they're doing, like I'm going to go be talking to the artisans and the production. And the reality is I'm passing it on to the team and just relaying the information. So how do I get myself out of those systems? And I've been working on that in the last year. I think with Diana, it's introducing her to our donors and trusting her in the speed and the way that she's going to handle the donor communication without me stepping in. So once I do the introduction and stuff, it's like, hey, I need you to follow up with this person and just let her do her thing at the time, and obviously give deadlines. But I think the more that she can update personally with that donor and then I'm just copied on it, the more that trust is built. And I've seen that already been transitioned over. But I mean, it's taken the first, this whole year to like really start to see that. And then I would say on the LLC side, this is really interesting working, and I'm curious your thoughts because you do have contractors internationally, but I find that my biggest struggle is for people in the West to trust my team in Kenya, to know that they are experts in their field and I don't need to be in every creative product development conversation, that they're going to take care of you. And so that's taking some time to develop that. But yeah. And then I think for me, I think as a leader, we just have to trust the process. The problem with us is we want things to happen like this. And our team works at a different speed, and we have to trust that, okay, it might not happen in 24 hours. Maybe it's going to happen in 36 hours, but that's still okay. So that we need to see things as we're not putting out the fire all the time. Right. But that like, it is. But when you are cash constrained, when you're trying to push sales, when you're just hustling, and that it is so hard because you know that you can work 10 times faster sometimes. But if we don't let go and loosen our reins, then we'll always be stuck in that perpetual cycle of having to step into the conversation. And I'm still learning that, in different elements. So yeah.
Here's the process. Love it.
Yeah.
No, and Diana's a good example because she's crushing it. Like, I think our donor communication has been, shout out to Diane, has been the best it's been. And there's so many touch points, whether it's tea time, chai chats, weekly prayer points being sent out, to just monthly recurring updates. Like she's doing an incredible job, but I could see the trust factor of that takes time too. So
yeah, especially when you have major donors who are giving like, large gifts, and you want to ensure that like, you're checking in with them. But okay. So what gets you up in the morning with all these changes?
I think it's bigger than me. I think like, and I think this is, I have a survey that I do with myself each week, and I grade myself on like 15 rules, and they're like Skyler seasonal 15 rules. And one of them is like, are you getting discouraged because it's taking longer? And that goes back to like, I want it done so fast. So trusting the process, but I know that our heart's in the right place, and I know that our model we're fleshing out, and our team we're optimizing. And so as we're doing those things, I think what we have is truly bringing more value than we're receiving. And what we're receiving is, monetary billing. That's great. And then we could feed and put food on the table for tons of families all over the world, which is great. But I really think that our product and our service model and our product is excellent, and it's going to change the trajectory of organizations because they're finally telling their story well. And when they do that and they trust the process, and founders can let go a little bit and trust the contract team, like you said, with someone they're maybe unfamiliar with, but they're ready for that change, then like magic happens. And that's where we feel like we're already there with so many clients. It's just a matter of building that trust, which is the greatest currency with others.
Founders. We're hard to deal with.
You're a determined bunch. a stick in the mud at points, but you guys know what you want, so that's nice.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your services for people. We, just got off a month last month talking with nonprofit leaders and experts in like fundraising and the end of the year and all these different things. And so I think coming from that, it was, I might bring in more nonprofit speakers because it was like the most successful month this year so far, and like viewership, and people were really engaged in it. But coming from that, obviously you work tons with social impact brands and nonprofits and organizations. So what are now your communication services? I know that's adapted a little over the last year that you offer.
Yeah, so it depends on who I'm talking to. So if I like meet Joe from the street and he's like, "What do you do?" I said I founded a marketing firm, because he can understand that. But for those in the social impact space or work with nonprofits, we say we run a communications firm. And so those are two in the same, but the call to action is not just buy this product, but it's donate or get involved from the nonprofit side. That's my disclaimer. Our services is we do 5 things really well. We do social media content really well. We do SEO and website maintenance really well. And then we do newsletters. And on top of that, if you're local or around one of our creative contractors, we do photo and video content well. And so those are kind of our pricing models. So, the packages are based on if you have more photo or video content on a recurring basis. But we also do a lot of one-offs like printed booklets or display on presentation slides and stuff like that. And with it being gala season, we're doing all the displays and kind of storyboarding for a lot of upcoming benefits here in town. So that's really exciting. But what's great is the majority of our team are just creatives that want to give back to social impact causes. So it's a win-win-win situation across the board where, a lot of these organizations get a very affordable service. We get to give an impactful portfolio to our creatives, and Confidant gets to grow and scale over time. So that's kind
of okay, Skyler. I feel like I want people to know you so much more. So go listen back to the other episode. We talk really a lot about just who I feel like you are. But what's interesting is I feel like if I were to take those same questions from our last episode, they would be the same and very different. And so I think there's a lesson we can learn in this of as people, we're evolving, we're changing, we're learning. As businesses, we're evolving, we're changing, we're learning. And I think for anyone listening to again, as we've talked about, trust the process. We're going to evolve, we're going to change, we're going to learn, and we're going to be better at the end of it. But if we decide to stay stagnant and the same, then we're always going to feel a little bit stuck. And so I think it's, I don't know, it's been really cool to, I don't want to say cocoon into a butterfly. That's very cheesy, but to see things change and grow, and even our friendship over the years develop. It's just been, I've been really blessed.
It would be interesting to even talk to the Skyler that was in School of Ethical Impact, and just he was so big-eyed. We're going to change the world. And you talk about this in your book. Shout out to Let It Be Well. So, and now I'm I've been into too many battles. It's less sexy than I thought. It's more bickering over contracts, and it's working through betrayals on people that you thought, or partnerships that you thought would work out that didn't. And that's hard. And I think I wake up every day and I'm ready for anything. And the highs are high, the lows are low, but I would rather live in that world because it's something more beautiful and bigger that we're a part of. But I definitely have some scars over the last 2 years, but I also understand that I think I've made more impact in the last 2 years than I ever had at my time in ministry. Because we're providing.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah, I really do. And I think when I'm today, looking behind the scenes, what I'm working through is hearing old clients that are not happy, that are kind of slandering our name because things didn't work out with them, and we've kept to our boundaries and fulfilled our contract. And I'm choosing to just be head down and let our work speak for ourselves. And this is the second time I've had to do this in the span of our organization. And or third time. And that's really tough for me because I take that personally, and I'm learning as a business owner, like I can't take those business relationships as personally, just because I care about our organization so much. And so it's been interesting how I've leveraged that for me, because I know the lever to pull where it makes me want to work even harder for our current clients. And I just keep receipts. And I print emails and then I frame them. And I just make note of like, I can't wait to show you one day that our character, who we are, my character, who we are as an organization, and the impact that we're going to have, which we need to start reporting and documenting, will speak for itself. The fruit speaks for itself. So I wish I would have told young Skyler that before he decided he would just take over the world. So.
Yeah, but that's so good because again, like, I mean, I can think of, I mean, you take it to the heart when it's something that you love, you're passionate about, you want to like push into the world. And at the same time, in any entrepreneurial side of things, like you don't have a strategy fully in place that's going to make sense, and you have to pivot and change. So you're technically always a little bit building the plane while you're flying it. And to have people, to go through something and not have, I mean, we can't ask for grace from everybody, and that of when things happen, but I mean, it can be a lot. Customers can be a lot. And at the end of the day, we want, everything to square away.
Well, I don't think we need to start a new model of like when to fire a client. Like that's something I've learned this year.
Yeah.
We've let 3 clients go just because that's more sustainable.
Do you think it was because of misalignment of values at the end of the day? Jumping in too fast? Yeah.
Yes. And also I just think the founder wasn't ready. The founder wasn't ready. And I think that's something that we could do a better job in system-wise on vetting in the discovery process. And I think that's where, when you're beginning, we're not totally in that stage now, but when you're in the beginning, you're just going to take work wherever. And then as you develop out your niche and say like, no, this is our standard and best practice, are we aligned there? And I think that's something that I've learned from you of like long-term, that's going to be better. So I'd rather take one client that doesn't give a headache than 3 stressful clients long-term, because I could take that time and do something else with it. So
yeah, for sure. Okay. As we end our time together, guys, I want you guys to go check out Confidant Co. If you are looking for anything like social media, any type of communication, specifically if you're running a nonprofit. And, I mean, I love how you mentioned even galas or printouts or impact reports, anything like that. I feel like, yes, our relationship has been really cool over the years. We have challenged each other in good ways. And so, my hope is, I mean, even Skylar's worked on some of our projects and, some of the strengths and weaknesses of my team and how we've had to navigate even Giving Tuesday. And he's helped raise, I think that year was well over $30,000 on Giving Tuesday.
2 years in a row, 30,000.
Yes. So Giving Tuesday is always really fun that we kind of get to partner with Skyler and his team. But there's so many other things that if you are looking for the extra hands in the resources, what I do want to say, and kind of what he mentioned is, he knows the support that he can give you. Are you ready as a founder? I know there's a lot of founders that listen to this podcast. Sometimes it's hard to let go and see a different perspective of your story. But the beautiful side is if you let someone into that, you're going to have touch points with other donors or networks or other new ways of communicating. And just, I don't know. I guess my hope for everyone listening is to challenge yourself in systems that you've had that you've been doing, and then how can potentially that change, whether that's the end of this year or you have to wait to 2025, take a deep breath, and maybe that's the new start of it. But I think our biggest change as an organization is when I finally, yes, loosened the grips and got help and realized, okay, we need people. It's not just me and my voice. We are a community and a collective voice. And how are we sharing that story in a way that is ethical, that's uplifting, that's empowering, and also touching, new people. That's not just internal to my networks. And so that's my little shout out for Skyler. You've been giving me so many great shout outs and call outs this podcast. Okay. We always end Moxie with one last thing to live by. So what is one last thing to live by that you're going to give our community to go out this week and feeling, I don't know, fire? So, is that too millennial of me to say fire? What's a Gen Z saying
too
here?
millennial. Gen Z would be like, I don't even know.
I don't know. I'm too old to know.
I don't know. Gen Z, if you're listening to this, leave in the comments what we should say. I'd say I'd piggyback off what you were saying and just like let go to the right people. And if you can build a community around you, it's going to be more impactful. It's going to be more sustainable, and having the right team, there's no better feeling. So find your people, place them in the right seats, and get going.
So good. So good. All right, guys. If you're this whole month has just been about your why, and you guys got to again hear a little bit of Skyler and just what he's got going on. We're gonna link all the little things in the show notes, how you find him, how if you want to listen to his past podcasts, to just I need to listen to that, by the way. I'm like, man, what did we talk about? Good stuff. There's all good stuff there. And as always, we're going to be here next week, and we are soon going to be moving into a month talking about transparency and storytelling. So I think this was a great month to kind of like set the scene of the why behind a lot of different initiatives. And then we're going to talk more about kind of people's stories and how they've been transparent, and then how they've brought that into their marketing of their businesses and different things. And which is ultimately helped sales. Our month, we're starting off with, just to give you a preview, we're starting off with Catherine Choi with So Young. And she completely, guys, took away 70% of her business of wholesale so that she could be direct to consumer, to just share her story of a founder and how she went from an addict to being sober and starting this company. So she has a really cool story. So stay tuned for next week. Skyler, thanks so much for joining us here at the Moxie Podcast. And as always, Moxie on.